fine-tuned mechanism that creation is, it brings you to the point where you know there has to be a God or a creator being.
I think people feel the need for something more than stuff.
I'm Nicole Johnson. Expressions of spiritual faith are as varied as people themselves. Coming up, several San Diegans share how they've been drawn to deeper faith through their experiences with nature, through illness and loss, in their work, and in moments of solitude.
Being a surfer, and I think most surfers come to this point, you're so immersed in Mother Nature that it brings about your awareness of the creation. And when you see the fine-tuned mechanism that creation is, it brings you to the point where you know there has to be a God or a creator being.
Skip Fry has been surfing since 1958. In his younger days, he traveled the world and did well in professional surfing competitions. Today, he manufactures his own line of custom-made surfboards. Even though Skip says he's occasionally stumbled on his spiritual journey, he believes God has never given up on him.
As far as God searching for me, he already had me planned out from the beginning of time. It's just that I've been up and down in my walk all through my life, and there's times when I stepped away from him, and he had to let me go through what I had to go through in order to see that I really needed him. So, and I went through some pretty heavy stuff. I mean, drugs, alcohol, the whole thing. I was in a mess. But God had a plan for me, and I kind of, with the help of him and prayers from other people, came away from that and realized that I needed him, and now I'm as close to him as I possibly could be. Surfing has been in the place of God quite a bit. I still wrestle with it because I've been so immersed in it. 40 years of solid surf, you know. I mean, the weather, I study the weather, and I'm always thinking about boards. So, yeah, I've had to deal with that. When as far as having that be my first concern of most of my thinking going toward that, you know, I still wrestle with it even today. Just from experience, I can just tell you that there's no greater relationship, and I mean, it's fun, it's wonderful, it's magical to have that relationship with God and have the creator of the universe in your life and working for you in all spheres. I mean, he wants to be involved in every little aspect, in everything that we do, every minute thing that we do every day. If we ask God's help in there, I mean, why wouldn't you want the creator of the universe to be there and helping you with every little part of your life?
Hope Terrell has spent most of her life as an artist. Until recently, she hadn't sought an intimate relationship with God. Still, looking back, she believes that God was searching for her all along.
Subconsciously, I did my artwork as religious artwork. They went into churches, they went into homes of very religious people all over the world. And when I think back, I don't know where it came from, except that God was urging me on. When I built my own studio and did it all alone, I wound up with the end of the house being in the shape of a cross. And there was always God there, and I talked to him. I always talked to him because I felt it helped me. But I talked to him like I would talk to a person. I would say, God, now you know you got me in this mess, now you've got to get me out of it. That's all there is to it. About 15 years ago, God took my thumbs away from me. It was called occupational arthritis, but without thumbs, we're an animal. And I couldn't do my sculpting. There was no carving, no nothing I could do. I finally found a doctor who would go ahead and do the operation, but he said, they'll never be the same, and they aren't.
Hope's abilities became further limited when she could no longer tolerate the heat at her much-loved Phoenix studio. She and her husband moved to Vista, California, but more sorrows were to come.
And 1 month later, there was just me in the boxes. My little dog had to be put to sleep. My husband dropped dead of a heart attack, and I was left in a new home, in a new place, in a new town. And I had nothing, I thought.
Fortunately, a caring woman from Hope's neighborhood recognized her distress and asked her to come to church. Depressed and emotionally shattered, Hope agreed to go. It turned into the breakthrough she had been awaiting her whole life.
Somebody helped us again.
The reason I could give up was because he had absolutely taken everything away from me. I had nothing. I had no emotions except horror of being alone, of being so sad, of all the terrible things, which I had had all the wonderful things of life. And it seems that he walked into me, I didn't walk into him. When I look back, I realized that every day of my life, God was asking me to have this relationship, that Christ was coming into my life, even to this little thing I have on. It's just a little piece of sandstone that I found on the beach. But it's definitely Christ with his hand out to me. And I found it, and I resined it, and I wear it, because that was Christ's way of handing his hand out to me. God just handed me everything. It seems that once I was willing to give up, all I had to do was just completely give up, and he took everything so that I would. And I did. And the minute I did, Christ came into my heart. God has always been there. I didn't know it, but he was always there.
There are few things that can make one think about faith and spirituality more quickly than a serious illness. And many people who have been there say facing their own mortality is the beginning of a deeper spiritual faith.
I know God is with me, but I couldn't really feel him.
For a while, Sarah Canton felt abandoned by God when she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
It was a Monday night, about 7:30, and the doctor called, and she said, in a rather apologetic tone, that yes, it was cancer. And right then, my life came to a halt. I didn't hear anything else she said. I just heard the word cancer, and I was just frozen. Certainly I prayed, but it was like just random, oh, help me, God, and what can I do now? But it wasn't really a connection there, and I didn't really feel like he was there. I didn't feel like I was there. I was terrified of everything ahead. The fear of the unknown, the surgery, the chemotherapy, just everything was terrifying. And one night I decided to go online and wondered if there were any support groups. And I found a breast cancer support group. I had never posted a message to a message board, and I just was frantic. I thought, I need help if there's anybody out there. And so I wrote a frantic message, and the next morning I came down, and there were over 85 emails for me. And this was so overwhelming. I really felt like these people were angels in cyberspace that had surrounded me. And one woman said, God will be holding your hand. And I thought, well, I don't feel like he's holding my hand, but I'm going to believe you. And then from there, all of a sudden, people in town, friends, began to know the news that I did have cancer, and I was bombarded with acts of kindness. I saw this flyer for a retreat, and so I decided to go. But when I got there, it turned out to be a silent retreat. So I thought, oh, okay, what am I doing here? And then I sat down at the first session, and the retreat director, she said, well, I hope everybody here can find God. And so I thought, that's why I'm here. That's what I want. One night I was sitting and having dinner, and of course we were all silent. And one of the nuns, who was a cook in the back, came out, And there were 30 women there, and she came up to me, and she put her arm on me, and she said, you know, you can put an intention in the book at the front of the chapel, and we'll pray for you, and we will pray for you forever. And then she just walked away, and I thought, I was so moved by that. I didn't know why she picked me out, and I thought, well, this is my glimpse of Jesus. So from then on, it was like a revelation. I realized that all these acts of kindness and all these people coming out of nowhere, it was really God was coming. So I was getting back to Him through them.
Being confined to a wheelchair could make some people bitter and disillusioned about faith. But that wasn't the case for Renee Bondi. Once a vocal music teacher in San Clemente, California, Renee had a tragic accident that forever changed her life. For still unknown reasons, one night in 1988, Renee literally took a dive off the edge of her bed.
I woke up midair, falling head first. I thought, huh? Hit the top of my head, heard my neck go chick, 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 chick. Finished the flip laying flat on my back, and I thought, oh man, now I've done it. I just thought I had royally kinked my neck. I did end up breaking my neck. For those of you in the medical world, I broke cervical vertebrae 4 with a little bit of 5. What that means is that it left me quadriplegic. Quad meaning all 4 limbs completely paralyzed. And to this day, almost 10 years later, I still have absolutely no feeling from right about here, right above my chest, down.
Through training and constant prayer, Renee built up the muscles in her diaphragm enough to sing again. Renee credits the music and its message of hope for helping her to find a deeper faith.
I really feel that music is another voice of God. He has several different kinds of voices. He speaks to us in different ways. We are all so unique, and He might speak to one person in one way and speak to another person another way. For me, He absolutely used music. When I was laying on the floor and wanting to be healed, and I would go to pray, and then I would go to the hospital and be there for 5 months, and I could not pray. I couldn't stay focused in prayer. My mind was on overload, if you will. And I would turn and start praying, and all of a sudden my head would come, "Be not afraid, I go before you always." And I truly know that the Lord used music, used those old hymns that, quite frankly, I was tired of, that I'd sung hundreds of times at our church over and over again. He used them to get back into my head.
And He will raise you up on eagle's wings.
Today, Renee reaches out with her music and testimony as an inspiration to others.
Make you to shine like the sun and hold you in the palm of His hand. The snare of the fowler will never capture you, and famine will bring.
This is definitely a ministry. If you had ever told me before my injury that I was going to be traveling around speaking and singing from a wheelchair, I would have said, yeah, right. But I truly feel that this is a calling. I feel like the Lord has called me to do this kind of a thing. I don't know exactly where or to whom and to how many or to how little. But as a teacher, I was grieving being a teacher or leaving my job. And one gentleman the other day after a concert came up and said, "Honey, you're still teaching." And so I really feel that God has called me to this ministry.
Wouldn't
wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't really joyful.
Kathy Scheel is a teacher who spent 2 years as a Jesuit volunteer in Nepal.
It really is the biggest leap of faith that I've ever taken. I just went really very strongly feeling that was the right place for me to go. I mean, every obstacle just fell down in front of me as far as being able to go. One thing that was really wonderful and an unexpected side benefit from living in a country like Nepal was how much more scriptures could mean to you, how much more resonant so many of the images were. For example, light. One evening, the priest was talking about images of Jesus as the light of the world, and he said, we in the West do not appreciate that image because we always have light. We can have light whenever we want to. It's really hard to find a place that's dark, you know, and if you want light, you flip a switch. Plus, I would say another thing that's certainly I don't think I noticed in America before I went to Nepal, and it absolutely hit me in the face when I came back, was that no one in America has any time. You don't get time to be contemplative, to sit and think, and you know, you want the maximum impact for your prayer time. If you're going to use it, all right, you're going to get some results from it. And I think a lot of times what faith needs and what faith life needs is time. Time to be present to what's happening.
In our hectic, fast-paced world, many people find it difficult to set aside any time for spiritual renewal. Sister Pat Hansen and Sister Millicent Peasley run La Providencia, a spiritual retreat center in Alpine, California. People come to them from all backgrounds, hoping to make a deeper connection with God. Sisters Pat and Millie have built a replica of the labyrinth found in the Cathedral of Chartres, France. For believers, the labyrinth symbolizes the spiritual journey. For the person who walks it, the labyrinth can still the mind and enrich one's spirituality.
We've been wanting to do this for many years. We found out about it several years ago, and we knew that it was connected with a journey. In fact, one of the things that we encourage people to do is that when they, just before they enter the labyrinth, that they let go of any expectations that they have about walking it, or any burdens that they are carrying.
Very often the people will find, as they walk the labyrinth, we'll see them crying. We know something deep has surfaced in their life. Maybe they've never been quiet enough to face it. Just like the prophet Elijah found God in a still, whispering voice, so today people can find God in silence, where they're attentive. It doesn't mean that they'll hear voices or hear God speaks, but God is spirit, so God speaks in silence. And a person knows when they have received that message from God. They just know it within themselves.
Searching for God in all the wrong places. That sounds like the title of a song, but it is a fact for too many of us. We go from one faith community to another in an effort to find God. Hello, I'm Art Cribbs, pastor of Christian Fellowship, United Church of Christ in San Diego, and president of Pacific Media Ministry. The search for God is noble and worthy, but how do we know if or when our search is successful? How do we know when or where to look? Do we even know where to start or what to look for as we begin our search? Many of us are seekers, people who are on a quest in search of the ultimate reality, God. Some may have given up or decided it's a search not worth pursuing. God is either too distant, too elusive, or without sufficient evidence of having any identifiable existence. For the seeker, there is no greater journey. Throughout the world's great religions, the compass most often points us inward. Somewhere on the path toward greater awareness, we discover the search for God takes us deeper within ourselves. We contemplate the clarity of divine compassion and companionship. Outside ourselves and in the physical world that surrounds us, we observe the miracles of life in all its forms. We explore the delicate nature that gives each creature its unique qualities and we ponder the interdependence we share in our fragile bioecosystem. If we're truly fortunate, our search for God never ends. It carries us through this life, and depending on how our level of faith evolves, takes us on a journey beyond this world that will bring us even closer to finding the one who caused all of this to happen in the first place.
I notice now in the newspapers, people talk about, oh, this return to simplicity, and I think that's part of us stirring towards that kind of take some time and have the time to contemplate, and you don't need as much stuff. I think that's the first response